To go from skinny fat to jacked. Now, no one wants to be skinny fat. We've all been there. I've 100% been there. It's not fun. The way you go from a skinny fat physique to an actual aesthetic, ripped, jacked physique is not the way most people think. You have to basically take two routes, and which one you choose will pretty much determine whether you build this physique that you're after. Now, I'm assuming here everyone who's watching is after the ripped, aesthetic, jacked physique that has a lot of muscle mass, has a lot of definition, has a lot of vascularity. You're wanting to be lean, right? You're wanting to see your abs, but you're also wanting to have a lot of muscle to show. You don't want to be skinny, right? So there's two options, okay? Now, let's determine what skinny fat actually is so we're on the same page here. Skinny fat, in my opinion, I remember when I was skinny fat, was essentially where I had a little bit of muscle mass. I could see, maybe a bicep vein, perhaps. See a little bit of a chest, but there was no visible abs. I had a bit of muscle mass, but there was no visible abs. I was kind of stuck in the middle. I think most people are in this phase here, and it's probably because there's not enough education as to what you should do in this situation. And really it comes down to a lack of clarity and a lack of direction with what you do, right? At the end of the day, if you are skinny fat, you're essentially carrying too much body fat and not enough muscle, which is pretty much what the term means, broken down very, very simply. And you don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to be carrying too much body fat, nor do you want to have little amounts of muscle. So really, you need to go in one direction or the other, and you need to be extreme with it. You either need to lose a bunch of fat or you need to build a bunch of muscle, and you don't sit in the middle. The middle doesn't get you anywhere. The middle is why people really hate their lives when it comes to the gym and don't like the way they look. It's because they sit there with no direction, and it's probably not out of choice. It's probably because they don't track and they probably don't take things seriously. Or perhaps it's because they don't understand exactly what they need to do. There's a lack of direction, which is why this video will be very, very useful if that is you. So here are two routes you can take and my personal advice as to which one you should do. First off, you can essentially enter a surplus. If you're a position of skinny fat, depending on how much body fat you're carrying, it might make sense for you to essentially enter a calorie surplus and take this very seriously and focus on building as much muscle as possible. There are benefits to this. One, more often than not, you will build a shit ton of muscle, which will essentially outweigh the amount of body fat that you carry. Essentially, you will have way more muscle to fat. Therefore, you will look much better. You will look much bulkier, and people will go, fair play. This guy looks massive. Or you could essentially lose a bunch of fat, get to the point where you are completely shredded, which will in turn make you look even skinnier, but it will remove the body fat once and for good, which then allows you to essentially enter a nice surplus with big, big runway because you'd be able to actually gain muscle whilst looking lean. Those are the two options that we have there, or obviously stay in the middle. But I don't think anyone wants to do that. Otherwise, you wouldn't really have clicked on this video, would you now? So personally, knowing what I know now, I believe I would actually go for the first option, which is essentially putting on as much muscle as possible. But there's one slight caveat. I would only do that if I was in the low 10% body, if I was between 10 to 12% body fat, or even less. If I was at 15% body fat, which is where most people are, if you cannot see your abs, I would not recommend quote unquote bulking. The reason why is because essentially you're already carrying too much body fat. After around 18% body fat, it becomes very hard for your body to really, really grow a load of muscle without gaining excess fat. Essentially, the partitioning of food does not work as well, your insulin sensitivity. So essentially what this means is when we are basically spiking our carbohydrates pre and post workout, the idea is that the excess glycogen is used towards anabolism, towards muscle growth. However, when you start to carry a lot of body fat, your insulin resistance becomes higher, your CV insulin sensitivity becomes higher. And essentially what happens now is basically it becomes very hard for you to use that glycogen towards muscle growth. It often gets stored as fat as well as the excess calories, which is why you never really see any insanely good bodybuilders. The bodybuilders you all know about get really, really puffy in their off season. No one goes past 18% body fat. Only the guys you see on TikTok and Instagram. And what they typically end up doing is putting on a load of size, dieting down, and then realizing that actually they just kind of look the same. Really, the ideal scenario for you to be actually gaining muscle is to get as lean as possible. Perhaps even 6 to 7% body fat, as lean as you kind of would on a bodybuilding stage. That depends on kind of where you're at, but anywhere between 6 to 12% would be a good starting point, with the clear ceiling being 18% body fat. That's kind of, your ceiling of where you got to call it a day and be like, hang on, we should probably do a bit of a cleanup phase. We should probably lose this body fat. Now, if you're 15% body fat and you're thinking of removing this skinny fat look by going and bulking up and adding a load of muscle, you've got to understand you have a 3% margin of error, because essentially now, you're going to gain fat from obviously a calorie surplus. That's inevitable. But now you can't really spend much time in an off season gaining size, which is really where the majority of muscle is built. And we do need to spend time in that. So it makes sense for you to actually just clean up and get the fat off once and for all, and understand that this is a productive time, because if you do it correctly, you'll get rid of the fat. And then if you actually know how to enter an off season and gain properly, you won't gain much fat after. I will prove it to you. So if you follow my Instagram or you follow my YouTube, you can see that I got to 65 kilogram and I got around 6 to 7% body fat. I was pretty shredded. Now I'm 78 kilogram. Look at my physique. I still have abs-ish. And I'm 13 kilogram heavier. Most people, if they gain 13 kilogram, they would not have done it this way. Now, the reason why I've managed to be in this situation is, one, because I've got into a position of low body fat to begin with, and two, I've actually known how to enter an off season properly. I've got a coach who helps me, and we aim for 0.6 kilogram per week. I don't take the piss with the calories. I increase them in accordance to my overall progress, and I make sure that I'm actually trying to gain muscle, not fat. That's how you do things, right? So if you're 15% body fat, you don't go that way. You don't try and gain loads of muscle, unless you really don't care the way you look. But I just personally think that's far from the truth. I think people can't actually stay uncomfortable that long. I think people eventually just act out of emotion, and then they look at their physique and go, ah, shit, I'm gaining loads of size. I don't like this. Let's diet. And then what happens when you diet? You don't really build much muscle. So you kind of just enter this yo-yo phase, and really people just stop in the middle, and that's why they just keep arriving at the skinny fat. What you need to do is you need someone really just to tell you how it is straight up and give you a blueprint that you just follow. And look, if you can't see your abs, just cut all the bullshit and just cut and just get rid of all that body fat. And then once you've got rid of all that body fat, then just make sure you really, really slowly focus on building muscle. If you're American, aim for 1 pound per week. If you're in the UK or Europe, aim for 0.5 to 0.6 per week. Do that and make sure that you train hard and you increase your lifts. Your lifts are the core metric that drive muscle growth, not just food, right? At the end of the day, you cannot go to the gym and you can eat a surplus of calories, your weight will go up. That does not mean you're growing muscle, you're just gaining fat. So understand that, right? Now, if you are just starting the gym, right? And I don't think this would be you, because you wouldn't be skinny fat if you're just starting the gym. Do you know what I mean? I'm talking to the people here very specifically who have trained for 2 years and are skinny fat. Therefore, I don't see any reason why no one should be not doing this cut, if that makes sense. The only reason you wouldn't do the cut is if you're already pretty lean and you can see your abs. You're just trying to get to a phase 1 position where you're really, really lean, and then you enter a surplus. That's what I would do there. Now, if you are someone who's obviously 20% body fat or more, you're carrying a lot of body fat, of course you do this. If you are someone who's 15, you do it. If you're someone who's 12%, this is where it gets a bit interesting. If you can see your abs, you're pretty lean, then I would say maybe a quick clean up 4 weeks. Just get yourself into a position where you're losing body fat. The way you do that is really simple. Just sit around maintenance calories and do some extra cardio. Just improve your base level of fitness and get better at training. Learn how to perform the movements with correct execution. You should be able to recomp here, build a little bit of muscle and lose some body fat, and then enter that slow gaining phase. That's the position you want to be in. And again, if you're really lean, you go for it. Now, once you've done that, right, you then want to make sure that you're spending as much time as possible in this phase to warrant actual muscle growth. So really 6 months, I would say minimum, to really, really push up here. And make sure that if you do make a mistake and you get to that 18% body fat, it's okay. You do a 1 month cleanup and you really, really focus on bringing that body fat down, and then you go again and you think about having an extensive runway to actually build your physique, actually to gain some muscle and really, really focus on building actual tissue. That's your goal, right? That's what you're aiming for. Now, just remember that if you want to actually build serious amounts of muscle, you need to do this slowly. If you do it slowly, you get to spend more time in an off season, in a gaining phase, without gaining excess fat, which means you grow more muscle. The big mistake people make is they rush it because they are impatient. They want results quickly, so they increase their calories, thinking calories are the core driver of growth, which couldn't be further from the truth. It's training intensity. So what happens is their off season should have been 6 to 12 months, and eventually it ends in 3 to 4 months because they look in the mirror, they don't like the way they look, and they think, I should diet now. But the truth is, in the 3 to 4 months that you were gaining weight, you weren't really building much muscle. You were just gaining a load of fat that you shouldn't have put on, and now it's going to come off, and you're probably not going to go all the way down to 6% or 7% body fat, because the fact that you didn't have a level of discipline to do so in the gaining phase suggests you won't be able to do it in the dieting phase, which means you end up back to square one and you're in skinny fat phase all over again. So the big core message here is be disciplined and make sure that you understand what phase you're in, you understand actually what you're trying to do, and you're patient with what you do. Because here's what happens. I know that seems a little bit negative, it's just the truth. No one will really tell you the truth, but that's what I've seen in the past with myself and other people. If you do exactly what I just said and you spend 6 months and you focus on really, really improving your core lifts, you focus on training intensity, you focus on getting strong, you focus on your sleep, you focus on your recovery, and you just really, really try and get better training. You see training as a skill, and you do that, then you'll be in a very good spot. You will have built loads of muscle. So then you can earn the right to diet. Then you essentially just need to, and if you do this right, by the way, if you started around 10% body fat, perhaps less, and you end around 15, 16, 17%, 3 to 4 month diet max, you get to that point and you go all in, you go sub 10% body fat, you get completely shredded. You follow the videos that I've put on this YouTube channel to essentially guide you on how to do that. You make sure you don't drop the calories too quickly. You do it again very slowly. You will not lose any muscle. You will lose all of the fat and you will look insane. And all of that can be done for a space of 9 months if you just do exactly what I said. But I think people get a little bit caught up in the noise. So if you wanted the blueprint to go from skinny fat to jack, that's kind of exactly what I would do. Also, side note, I had a guy the other day say, like, I should take my own advice. I look shit. I think really it's the seat where I'm sat. Obviously, I'm on a bit of a wide lens here. I don't look as big as I am right now. But I tell you what, I'm currently sitting at fucking 79 kilo. And I'm the biggest I've been. So I find that quite hard to believe. I just think if you're watching, mate, here's some fucking credentials, all right? But I want to make sure that people don't think I'm just chatting shit. If you think I am, follow my Instagram, watch all my YouTube videos, because I speak with such conviction because I don't really need to prove myself. I know what I'm on about. I do it for myself consistently. I do it for other people as well. There's a reason why I'm making these videos. It's not necessarily just for fun. I do really enjoy making these videos. I could talk about this for years, but it's because I know what the fuck I'm talking about. So whoever did comment that, I hope that proved you wrong, mate. But that's exactly what I'd do if I wanted to go from skinny fat to jacked again. I would pretty much ignore the status quo. I wouldn't just bulk into the high percentages of body fat. I would remove the body fat once and for all. I would make sure I understand why I'm putting body fat on in the first place, what it actually is, and why it's detrimental to my physique. And then I would focus on getting stronger without putting much body fat on. You don't need to put loads of body fat on to get stronger and build more muscle. That's just a lie. That's just poor dieting. You eat in correspondence to performance. If the weights aren't going up, add a bit more carbohydrate. You'll have a little bit more energy. Once you have a little bit more energy, you're able to lift more. And the idea is for all of this excess food to be used. Of course, as you increase the calories into the 3.5, 4K range, there's going to be a bit of spillover. There's going to be some excess body fat. Nothing we can't fix with a little diet. But the big mistake people make is just fucking sending it with the food, dieting down, not doing it properly, not having a bit of clarity, and then essentially just ending up back where they started. That's why people stay skinny fat. So my advice to you, if you are watching this, choose a phase, choose it wisely, do it properly, be disciplined, track everything, don't take the piss, and just commit to something. If you're dieting, accept it. Go all the way. If you're bulking, if you're trying to enter an off season, you're trying to gain muscle, embrace it. Don't lose motivation when you start to gain a bit of body fat, you look a bit soft. At the end of the day, you're here to build muscle. The people who don't really build the best physiques are the people who act out of emotion and people who just go, I don't like the way I look, I'll have to diet now. Look, I feel like that all the time. 3 months ago, wanted to go, I miss my abs, I want to get lean, but I understood exactly what I'm trying to do. My goal is to build muscle, and the only way I'm going to build muscle is if I carry on doing things despite how I feel, despite what people may think of me. I just do it regardless because I know when I diet down after this in January, I will look insane. And that's the sacrifice you make. And that's the game. So I think the reason people are skinny fat is because they don't commit to things. So if you want to actually build a jacked physique and you just want to stop being skinny fat, start committing, start doing it properly, go all in. Don't act out of emotion. You do all of that, you'll change your physique, okay? Any questions, let me know. Other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. See you tomorrow. All the best.